Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Tony, almost college football playoff time. I mean, as we're recording this, it's literally like hours away from college football playoff time because there is a Friday night game that I literally keep forgetting is about to happen. But the Saturday game, prime time, Tony. As long as you're in like Western Europe, it is prime time for Texas A&M and Miami. Biggest game possibly of the weekend, certainly the biggest game for Ohio State fans. Prime time, 11 a.m. local kickoff. Can't wait.
But the people in Texas are used to this. So that if you don't like it, move. As people in Texas often say to other people, if you don't like it, move. And if you don't like the 11 a.m. kickoffs, move. And Miami fans, if you don't like the 11 a.m. kickoffs, be the higher seeded team. And then you could be kicking off at 12 p.m. See, wouldn't it be better than if you're kicking off at 12 as opposed to 11? And frankly, if you just keep your body clocks at 12 p.m., you're going to be fine. Stay on Eastern time, and you will be okay. I promise you. Don't worry about checking that extra hour. It's like, no, you don't need it. You're fine. And so we are here to talk about the biggest game of the year to this point, the one that Ohio State fans care about, and Texas A&M fans care about, and Miami fans care about, and who cares what anybody else cares about. And so I wanted to start off. Let's start off with the Texas A&M offense against the Miami defense, and we've only watched the most recent games for each of these two teams. We watched Texas A&M lose to Texas. We watched Miami beat up on Pitt. So that's the most recent, picture that we have of both teams, and maybe it clouds my perception of things. But in terms of the Texas A&M offense, obviously it starts with Marcel Reed and the quarterback. And when we talk about Marcel Reed, Tom, the biggest memory that I have of him is the first half against South Carolina. I think the second biggest memory is the second half against South Carolina. But I was shocked. I went back and looked at the stats from that game. He only threw 2 interceptions in that game. And I'm telling you, there could have been 5 in that first half. And that's what always gets me going back to when I think about Texas A&M, I think about watching one of the worst quarterback performances I've seen. But the good news for Texas A&M, and we'll talk about this later on, the second worst quarterback performance I've seen was Carson Beck against Louisville. So I don't know what to think, basically.
Yeah, this is a really intriguing game because you could see almost anything happening here. Normally, we'll have this conversation and it's like, Miami wins by a lot, Miami wins by a little, Texas A&M wins by a little, Texas A&M wins by a lot. And it's like, well, the one thing I really can't see happening is, this team wins by a lot. I can't see a scenario where that happens. I could see a scenario where either of these teams wins this game by 3 touchdowns, or I could see a scenario where it goes right down to the final minute. These are incredible high variance teams, just incredibly high variance teams. Just, you mentioned the Louisville game for Carson Beck. He threw 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in that game. If you'd like to lose to an unranked team, that is a great way to do it. So yeah, that's one side of it. But then the first half for Texas A&M against South Carolina was at home against I think 4-win South Carolina team. And they were down 30-3 at the half, down by 27 points at home. When was the last time Ohio State was down by 27 points at home? You can puzzle that out. Well, I mean, we're probably talking decades. 27 points at home at half against a 4-win team. It boggles the mind. But then they came back and they won the game in the second half, like not in overtime, like won the game in the second half. And so you have these incredible error bars on both of these teams. And one of the things that really, I think, starts this conversation for me about why this is such a wildly unpredictable game is I don't think either of these teams are going to be able to run the ball at all, like not even a little bit. And these are two pretty good run defenses, and they are 2 not particularly good run offenses. Texas A&M 28th in the nation in yards per rush. Miami, in terms of yards per rush allowed, 10th. And so I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball really much at all, which means you're putting a lot on Marcel Reed. And frankly, I think a lot of the rushing for Texas A&M is probably going to come through Marcel Reed as well, which then you're putting a lot on one guy. And as you just sort of laid out, like within one game, he could be a very high variance player just by himself.
Yeah, and he's capable of anything, which is great and which is also scary. And really, if anybody rushes for like 150 yards in this one, to me, it's because somebody just busted a 60-yarder, and then they've got 30 other rushes for 2 or 3 yards a gain. And then when I look at both of these teams, and stay with the A&M offense, they are 58th in the nation on third downs, which is not great. Miami's defense, 10th in the nation, again, on third downs. So this is a situation that does not bode well for Texas A&M, and it's one where you will probably need Marcel Reed to pick up 3 or 4 or 5 third downs on his feet. And so, like, that's not a great situation for Texas A&M, their third downs. Their red zones, they're 77th in the nation in red zone scoring, and Miami's red zone defense against just regular scoring and touchdown scoring is 69th nationally. So they're below average. Let's just call it what it is, especially among Power 4 teams. But I don't know that Texas A&M's red zone offense, their red zone touchdown scoring offense, is 42nd in the nation. They score a touchdown on 2/3 of their trips into the red zone. These are not numbers that are conducive to Texas A&M scoring, routinely, or like just finishing, I guess is what I should, finishing the drive, finishing a series. They're not going to be in a great spot with this. It's hard for me to see them, even if they're staying ahead of schedule, the third down and putting the ball into the end zone, I think is going to be difficult for them in this one.
Yeah, and I don't know how well they're going to be able to stay on schedule if they can't run the ball. And so then you're getting into a bunch of 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 kind of plays. And, we're going to talk about both of these teams, but one of the strengths for both of these teams is the pass rush. And they have been able to get home especially in predictable passing situations. Texas A&M is 1st in the nation in sacks. Miami is 16th. Both of them are really, really defensive front heavy in terms of the pass rush. That just creates more, 3rd and 6. If you're in 3rd and 6, if you can't run the ball and you get yourself in 3rd and 6, then you have a really binary outcome. Either you complete the pass, and 3rd and 6 is an absolutely completable thing. You throw a 7-yard pass and you got it, like no problem. But if you get sacked, then then it's 3rd and 16, and then you've lost, you're losing field position, you're giving up the ball, you're taking away the opportunity to go for it on 4th down if it's close, if it's a close and late situation and you're trying to keep up. That's all stuff that makes this game more unpredictable because it swings on one play here or there, or does this one guy, can the right tackle block this one pass rusher, whether it's Cassius Howell for Texas A&M or Ruben Bain for Miami, can you block this one guy on this one play in order to give your quarterback time to throw the ball? Because both these teams have capable quarterbacks. Both these teams have capable wide receiver units. Can you win that one-on-one battle? And that is just such an unpredictable piece of this. And that kind of goes to why I struggle to see Texas A&M being able to move the ball down the field in a 10-play drive, 12-play drive. I don't think they can consistently execute I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball enough to get themselves consistently into 3rd and short. And I don't think they're going to be able to execute consistently enough to be able to convert 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, especially given the pass rush from Miami. And at that point, then it's like, well, all right, if you can't keep the chains moving on 1st and 2nd down, and it's hard to get into 3rd and short, and it's hard to convert on 3rd and long, well, then that sounds like you're going to have probably a little bit of a challenge scoring points.
Can I change your mind, Tom, by letting you know that Marcel Reed completes 2/3 of his passes on 1st down, completes 63.3% of his passes on 2nd down, and then completes 48.6% of his passes on 3rd down. Yes,
is
48.6.
that good? I don't know a lot about football. Is that good? No. No?
No,
I'm
he's
getting a no out of you? No? Mm.
48.6, and it's he's 54.5 on third down and 1 to 3 yards to go. And then from 4 to 6 yards to go, he's 45.5. From 7 to 9 yards to go, 47.6. And from 10 yards or more, he's 50%. And so, yeah, if you get Texas A&M into third down, you are going to do a very good job of closing this thing out and limiting the Texas A&M offense. That's easy football speak, of course, but third down has not been kind, and Miami's defense has the capability of, as you said, creating havoc on the defensive line. Because as we watched this game, the Miami Pitt game, we both, like, neither one of us wrote down a linebacker basically in this. It was the front four and it was the secondary. That was pretty much what stood out. And really, I think that's what's going to be the decider, or should be if Miami wins, that's what's going to decide it.
Yeah, and Texas A&M is not necessarily a team that's built to challenge a team that's kind of front four and back 4/5 kind of heavy, where if your secondary is good, and Miami's had some injuries in the secondary this year, and so if those guys are really going to be back and healthy and 100%, then that helps you cover the guys like Casey Concepcion, because Texas A&M can throw the ball. Texas A&M does have weapons in the passing game, and if Texas A&M is throwing the ball, then that opens things up for Marcel Reed to run the ball, and then that, whether that's on designed runs or sort of scramble situations, either way, he's going to be a really important part of this Texas A&M offense, because I think some of those 3rd and 5s, 3rd and 6s, if he's not going to be able to throw it consistently, he's going to have to make some plays with his legs. And we have seen him. He is a really dynamic runner. That's when you could potentially see Miami's linebackers either be names that we're writing down for positive reasons or names that we're writing down for negative reasons. That's kind of the one area that I look at and think that could be where you see the Miami linebackers for good or for ill.
Yeah, that's a good point. Tracking him down, keeping him. Basically, if you're going to cage him, then those guys have to be the linebackers have to be the ones that go in and basically clean him up. Let's go to the other side of the ball and talk about Miami's offense against Texas A&M's defense. And I'm going to start off the same place, and that's third down, because Texas A&M has the number 1 third down defense in the nation. They allowing 22.7% completions on third downs, conversions on third downs. Not good. Miami's 20th in the nation. They convert on 47% of their third down attempts, which is fine, not bad. But when you're running into an A&M defense that can get after you with Cassius Howell, it's a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about with the Miami defensive line, is that the Texas A&M defensive line is going to get after Carson Beck. Now, I think what helps him is I like Miami's offensive line better than Texas A&M's offensive line, their ability to protect the passer from outside in. I think they're pretty darn good, and they leave Carson Beck with a clean pocket. So to me, I know Texas A&M has the SEC Defensive Player of the Year in Cassius Howell, but I like Miami's ability to protect Beck. Now, I don't think you're going to save him all day long. I think you're going to give up some plays. And it's like in those few instances where Beck is pressured, because we know he will throw some bad passes when he's pressured. In those instances, Texas A&M needs to take advantage of them like Louisville did. And in Miami's 2 losses this year, you had Carson Beck throw 2 interceptions, or 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. 6 of his 10 interceptions have come in those 2 losses this year. And so that's something that he will provide, but Texas A&M needs to be willing to accept and just hold on to the ball, I guess, in the instances where you have a chance.
Yeah, and getting Miami to third down, and especially third and sort of medium, like that feels like either team getting into third and medium is going to be, you're going to convert at a very, very low rate. And for Miami, I do like the offensive line, like you said. I think I give Miami a little bit of an advantage in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I have not a ton of faith in either of these quarterbacks. They're both kind of, is this a good day or a bad day? Is this a good Carson Beck day or a bad Carson Beck day? Because we have certainly seen both of those. And I think Mike Elko's defense, Mike Elko was renowned as a defensive mind, and does a lot of the same, not specifically the same, but some of the broader, real complex coverage disguise kind of stuff that we've seen a lot from Matt Patricia with Ohio State this year, where you get one picture pre-snap and another picture post-snap, and that can, I think I'm getting cover one. Oop, it's actually cover two, or vice versa. Or, hey, they're in Tampa, and there is a guy in the middle of the field. How about that? I wasn't expecting to see him there. And if there's pressure, then you can get Carson back to the point where, okay, now the picture is changing and his clock's getting sped up. That's where you get turnovers. That's where you get mistakes. And he will kind of do a little bit of all the stuff that will drive you crazy with a quarterback, where he'll hang on to the ball too long. He'll try and force the ball in somewhere. I think Carson Beck throwing the ball away, that's not a bad outcome for Miami on a lot of plays, because it feels like if he's just throwing incomplete, that's probably, if Carson Beck doesn't throw an interception, I think there's a decent chance. I think there's a pretty good chance, if that's all you tell me, then I feel like Miami's probably better than even odds to win this game. I just don't know how much faith to have in Carson Beck, because he has looked fantastic the last month, but the defenses, we did this on a show a week or two ago, where the defenses they've played, the best defense they've played in terms of SP plus was Pitt, and Pitt's 50th. And then it's a bunch of teams in the 80s and the 100s. Texas A&M is way, way better than that. Texas A&M is, in terms of defense, 21st. Now, that's not incredible, but it's certainly the best defense they're going to have played since they've had those games that they lost, and those games where Carson Beck looked really kind of lost. And Texas A&M's defense is kind of statistically right around Louisville, right around SMU, where this is not the greatest defense in the history of the world, but it's by far a better defense than Miami's seen in a while. And it's just, again, which Carson Beck do we get? And even from play to play, that may swing quite a bit.
Well, and I gave you the third down passing for Marcel Reed, so I'll do the same thing for Carson Beck. He's 80% on first down, 77% on second down, 64.7 on third down, and that includes 11 of 12 on third and between 1 and 3 yards to go. He's 2/3 completions on 4 to 6 yards to go. Some reason he's 48%. He's 13 of 27 on 7 to 9. So if you're Texas A&M, try to get him in that 7 to 9. But he's 15 of 22 on 3rd and 10 or longer, and picked up only 5 of those third downs in those 22 pass attempts. So third down, again, a terrible place for both programs. I think Carson Beck has shown he will complete a higher percentage, but of those third down, he's thrown the ball 85 times on third down, completed 55. Of those 55 completions, 34 of them were first down. So this is also probably some checking down, and it's 3rd and 8, and you throw it to the sideline for 2 yards, and then you punt. And frankly, that's, again, as Jim Tressel says, Tom, as we know, any possession that ends in a kick, you'll take it. And as you said, if Carson Beck doesn't throw an interception, I might like Miami by 7 in this one. But that's we'll see if that's a possible ask. In terms of the red zone situation, Miami 12th in the nation scoring in the red zone, 92% conversion rate. That drops to 20th on touchdowns. They're 71% conversion rate. Texas A&M scoring defense, the red zone scoring defense, 131st in the nation. If you get in the red zone, they're going to allow some sort of a score 93.8% of the time. Comes down to 59.4% on touchdowns, so 2/3. They're 67th in the nation. Red zone defense allowing touchdowns. So again, this is an area where I think Miami has more ability to capitalize. Things are more favorable for them. Doesn't mean they're going to do it. But another reason I tend to like Miami's chances here, they do a better job in the red zone. And Texas A&M, they've allowed a lot of scoring in the red zone.
Yeah, this just feels like a game where if you're going to make the argument for Texas A&M, it's they can maybe pressure Miami into some mistakes on offense, and you get a turnover, you get a short field or two, and that can swing the game. And the other thing is the atmosphere at Kyle Field, and that this is going to be very loud, this is going to be very hostile, and this is going to be by far the most difficult atmosphere that Miami's faced all season. So I think if you're going to make the case for Texas A&M, it's that. if you're going to make the case for Miami, it's, boy, they sure seem like they have a lot of little advantages. There's not an area that I look at and go, Texas A&M is clearly better than Miami in this area. But if you look just the matchup in the trenches, I like Miami's offensive line, a little bit better than Texas A&M's defensive line. Just a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit. And I like Miami's defensive line a little bit better than Texas A&M's offensive line. And I think the special teams, which in a game that's potentially going to be close, Texas A&M has had all sorts of kicking issues this year. They changed kickers relatively late in the season. They're 81st in SP Plus in special teams. Miami is 12th. And, if you have a consistent, reliable kicker in a game like this, that could make a huge difference. That could be the difference between who moves on to play in the Cotton Bowl and who ends up going home. And I look at all this stuff, and it just, to me, adds up to, I think Miami wins this game. I think it's relatively close, but, if someone is +2 in turnovers, that team is going to win this game by 2 scores. Like, I know that these are always, it's always just, well, win the turnover battle. That's one of those, like, the network people put that on their keys to the game graphic, and it's just like, here's the free space in the bingo card. But in a game like this, where neither team is going to be able to run the ball particularly well, you're going to have to throw it. And when you throw it, as Woody Hayes once said, Tony, 3 things can happen and 2 are bad. Can you avoid, only one of them is really bad. And incompletion is not a bad thing in this game. But man, you get that one interception somewhere. It just feels like someone is going to throw a back-breaking interception in this game at some point. And, I'm going to say Miami wins this game. I do it with a very, not a huge, high level of confidence. Like, oh yeah, they're going to just coast in this game. But I keep looking just around the field at all the different individual matchups. And I keep going, yeah, I like Miami just a little bit there. I like Miami just a little bit there. And it feels like that's going to add up enough to overcome the home field advantage.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we didn't say anything about Malachi Tony or Casey Concepcion, and maybe whoever has the biggest game between those two actually decides this one, because it may just be that lone touchdown that separates somebody. I'm also going with Miami because of the little things, and this came down to, do I side with what I've seen and what I believe, or do I side with Kyle Field? And that's a tough situation, because I am an all-time believer in the home field. Does it always work for me? No, it does not. But I do love the home field advantage, and I think Texas A&M, you should win your home games in matchup games like this. But I just see more from Miami that I like. I'm going 24-20, Tom. I don't know if you wrote a score down, but that's about where I am. But the other thing is, Tom, this is going to be I believe it's going to be a one-possession game. Mm-hmm. And then if you're at home, you have the advantage there. You've got that. And if you're on the road, you're dealing with that. Carson Beck dealing with the crowd, dealing with all of that. But if you're Marcel Reed and you're down 24-20 in the fourth quarter with 1:45 left, that's a ton of pressure, and you're feeling the weight of all of those fans in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, we have certainly been there for a bunch of those, both home and away, those games where everyone in the stadium is going, oh no, it's happening in a bad way again. And Texas A&M is certainly, as a fan base, that is probably a little bit predisposed to, oh no, it's happening in a bad way again. So if you get into that scenario, yeah, you can feel that in the stadium. And I do want to expand a little bit on the crowd noise piece of this, just because I want to, this is not just EA Sports college football. Oh no, the camera is shaking and my receivers are confused. Like, no, here's how that's actually going to impact the game if it does. Miami has had a bunch of procedure penalties on the road on offense, and you get a false start, you get a delay of game, you have to burn some timeouts. How much were we just talking about the fact that you got to stay on schedule? They're probably not going to be able to run the ball. How crucial it's going to be to not get in 3rd and long. If it's 3rd and 2 and the crowd's loud, does your right tackle hold his water or not? That might be the difference in the game, because if you get to 3rd and 7, all of a sudden, boom, then it's a problem. If they can snap it with 3rd and 2, then okay, maybe that's a much more convertible 3rd down, and that sustains a drive and that leads to a touchdown. as opposed to having to put the ball away and you not having that touchdown in what could be a very close game. So yeah, that's another one. Tell me how many penalties Miami has and penalty yardage. Because if Miami has 8 penalties, even if it's 8 penalties for 40 yards and it's just a bunch of 5-yarders, those might be drive killers. Normally you think, a holding or a chop block or whatever, or hands to the face, like those being drive killers. In a game this close where you maybe can't run the ball, those false starts and delay of game kind of penalties, those could be the difference. So yeah, that is, I think, a really, really, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something we really did need to sort of lay out a little bit. As far as a score, 24-20 sounds about right, but maybe just a little bit high. If you're not getting short fields, if you're not scoring on defense or special teams, I'll say like a 21-17, like a little lower than that. But this to me feels like it's probably a fairly defensive game. Not as low scoring as the Alabama-Oklahoma game. That's that might be a touchdown less even than this, but for each team. But this one just feels close, low scoring, and man, it is just going to come down to those 1 or 2 plays. But I will give Miami a slight edge here.
You mentioned the penalties and the procedures and things of that nature, and that's why, Tom, I'm going 24-20 Texas A&M as well. One of these two teams will win this game by a score of 24-20, and it just depends on who doesn't screw up more, basically. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to find out some stuff, and then once this game is over, it is full bore into the Cotton Bowl coverage, and we'll have it broken down into as many possible ways as we can break this thing down. And you guys saw what we did for the Michigan game. We're going to do the same thing for this, and good news is we've got a little bit more time to do it, so that means more content as well, and just a lot of fun, a lot of information, a lot of games to rewatch. It'll be nice to know which games, frankly, to start watching. And of course, if you guys want to see those videos when we drop them, subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. And if you're watching right now, hit the thumbs up. We'd appreciate that. Hit the bell to be notified when things get dropped, because there will be plenty of stuff coming. And of course, we're going to be talking about all of this on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Would love to see you there. Sign up there. Audio platforms, Buckeyes tomorrow morning, Tom's everyday show. Subscribe to that one. It'll drop into your phone, to your laptop, to your television, wherever you need it. Of course, Buckeye Weekly, the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast. You got Primetime, Buckeye Huddle Primetime with Juck. You can find all of these on your podcast platforms of choice, and of course, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. So that will do it from here. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.